2.8. The update has received a lot of quality of life updates, which makes me feel a lot more open about asking for some more. So these are 3 features that Mirta is currently still having significant beef with in Infinity Nikki, and the first of them would be dyeing. Yep, just like outfit dyeing. Mainly, what I want them to do, quite specifically, it will be very niche, but I want the alternative final evolution details to be transferable to previous versions of the dress. Why? Well, Infinity Nikki dyeing system is extremely fidgety. I need to find the dye for the butterflies in here to show what I mean. There we go. That's the butterflies. As you can see, butterflies don't dye very well. They retain this purpley thing, right? I don't like that. It limits my ability to mix and match the way that I would like to mix and match. It limits my ability to be able to experiment with fashion the way that I would like to experiment with fashion, because the butterflies are being very finicky. It's kind of to do with what Infinity Nikki uses to even get dye working. The dye is kind of going on top of the material rather than replacing the material's color, so some of these are just gonna dye really, really awkwardly. The workaround for this is normally to just get the outfit that has the problem part in the color that you already want. So, for example, if I could switch the alternative version of this dress and apply it to the red one, well, I still couldn't dye the friggin' butterflies. The butterflies would already be yellow, so I could just dye the rest of the dress. Or I could get butterflies in white. I wonder if butterflies here dye very well. Yeah, I think butterflies in pink dye better than butterflies in dark purple. So technically, if I could take the alternative evolution and apply it to a more dyeable base, like a lighter color outfit, I could then work around the problem parts of these dresses. So my desire for the workaround is that we can apply the final evolution details to previous versions of the dress so that we can work around the problem bits of the whole dye process. However, this is a workaround for the problem bits of the whole dye process. Ideally, the whole dye process wouldn't have problem bits. So I have very big beef with the whole process of dyeing. Let me just find the newest dress. Where are you? You're here, I think. That's where you are. I think this one is not too bad, but it's... Final evolutions have this issue where sometimes you're just not gonna get the result that I want. Like, this is the whitest that you can go on this dress. Do you see how this is not very white? That's what I mean when I say that the whole dye thing is an overlay. Some dresses won't dye black, some dresses won't dye white, some dresses have parts of them that can't be dyed, like the friggin' butterfly that just wants to stay purple. Ideally, ideally the dyeing process wouldn't be an overlay on top of the dress, but would be, you know, something that replaces the dress's base color so that, you know, the dyeing process would actually work. I have a lot of beef with the dyeing process, but if that's impossible, I just want final evolution changes to be applicable to all the dresses beforehand, so that I can select the base that's most likely to dye well in order to apply the dyes that I want. So that is my number one long-running beef with this game. My number two system that I have quite a lot of beef with is the color lookbook. You can filter this thing, for example, by a specific item that you want to search for. I typed in something completely random, so we could filter for that, so that's very useful. There we go. Now we can see modelings to do with this like one specific item, and what if we want it in red? It will go by vibes rather than but what actually is red, so good to know. But technically, right, you can actually filter this thing. But one of the problems that I have is that there's no way to just have a button somewhere in here that says exclude any posts using items that I do not have. Which means that the colored lookbook is mostly usable for people that have most of the items, or at the very least majority of the items. This means that it's fairly not usable for new players, and we're also not very incentivized to make actual looks for new players that are new player accessible, aka looks made out of items that are available mostly for free and don't include limited banners. My second beef with color lookbook is that if I decide to like click use the scheme and import what I have, is that it will actually use up a dye channel. And this is also a problem with the fact that even if you use the color lookbook in order to save your own works, if you re-import that, a new dye channel gets created and overwritten, even though you already have that item dyed in that exact color with that exact dye channel. So, even if you wanna use the color lookbook as like a wardrobe, this is so friggin' awkward with us having 7 dye channels and it just kinda creating a new one, like leaving 2 duplicated dyes side by side. So, honeys, this is awkward. I would really love to be able to either select not to overwrite the dye channel, select which dye channel I am gonna be overwriting on these, or, you know, select an existing dye channel to use, or just an ability to not import the dyes, just the fashion itself, so that I can dye the item myself however I would want to. I think that would really help with the usability of the color lookbook, but primarily, I would really love a button in here that just says exclude any stylings using items which I do not have. I think that would make my experience with the color lookbook a lot better. So that's second beef that I have with a long-running system in this game. My last long-running beef that I have with this game is how walls have dyes attached to them rather than, you know, wallpapers being a thing. For example, this is a bathroom sort of wall. if I wanted to, I can also make it look like an outer room wall, but I can't make it look like an outer house wall. Which means that if I wanted to build a bathroom, I either need to clip it into existing walls, or I may not build my bathroom in a way that touches upon the outer house wall in either way, which is kind of weird. Because normally, in all the houses that I lived in, outside of like one, bathrooms tend to have an outside window. So like you would build them alongside the exterior wall so that, you know, you can install that outside window for, you know, ventilation. When I lived in my Lithuanian home, the bathroom was built into the living room and the ventilation kind of came through like the air exhaust. So it's not impossible, it's just a very weird architectural solution to do that. It also let in the natural light by having tiny windows into the living room at like the top of the bathroom. But that's some janky architecture, not how normal people build bathrooms. Fun fact, this wall cannot have a door. So if you want your whole bathroom to be colored like this, which is, you know, tile color, you will either have an empty gap for entry and exit, or your door will simply not match. Therefore, building in Infinity Nikki is just extremely not good. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is the third system that for me really needs an update because it's not good. What I'm trying to say is like peel away that wall dependency on wallpaper and have wallpaper be its own thing that you unlock. You can pay for it, you can make it a limited resource, but like let me slap that wallpaper on any sort of wall instead of tying the walls and wallpapers together. So this is my list about what I would like fixed the most. I'm very into the fashion part of this game, so the dyeing is by far the top of my list for me, but the rest of these are also nice to have. What would be your list of things that you would really, really like to see change in this game? Please disclose it in the comment section down below. Maybe we can, like, I don't know, decide exactly what we're putting into our feedback sheets together so that these things hopefully at some point get addressed. Outside of that, we're nearly at the next patch cycle, so that's gonna be exciting. So thank you for spending time with me today. Hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next update as well. Thank you so much for my Patreon supporters, and toodaloo for now.